When I first heard of prominent Christians publicly denouncing God and embracing atheism, I didn't fully understand why. These were people I had once admired, pastors, worship leaders, apologists figures who seemed to embody faith in its purest form. Their deconstruction stories felt like betrayals to those of us still clutching onto our fragile beliefs. But as I listened, read, and reflected, one thing became painfully clear: their renunciation wasn't impulsive. It was born from deep, unresolved tensions within the very foundations of their faith. Take people like Joshua Harris, the author of I Kissed Dating Goodbye, or Marty Sampson, the Hillsong songwriter who penned some of the most heartfelt worship lyrics. Their departure from faith was shocking to many, but their reasons followed a pattern. One common trait among them was a profound disillusionment with institutional Christianity. They had spent years behind the curtain, witnessing the cracks in the church's armor, hypocrisy, abuse of power, and a refusal to address hard questions. They saw how faith could be used as a weapon, one that harmed more than it healed. Another trait was their struggle with unanswered questions about suffering, justice, and the nature of God. They wrestled with the same issues many of us do, but found no solace in the standard theological answers. Why does an all-powerful God allow innocent children to suffer? Why do prayers seem to go unanswered? Why does God remain silent in the face of injustice? These weren't abstract questions for them. They were deeply personal. They were also thinkers, people unafraid to challenge what they had been taught. Many had grown up in environments that discouraged doubt or intellectual exploration, where questioning God was equated with sin. But as they encountered new ideas through science, philosophy, or simply life experience, their inherited beliefs began to unravel. Lastly, many of them had been deeply invested in their faith communities, often as leaders or role models. Their lives revolved around ministry, making the eventual unraveling of their faith not just spiritual, but existential. Losing belief in God meant losing their identity, their purpose, and sometimes even their community. These people didn't renounce their faith lightly. It was a painful process, often accompanied by feelings of guilt, fear, and isolation. But what united them was a relentless desire for truth, even if that truth led them away from the God they once worshipped. Hearing their stories didn't make me want to follow in their footsteps, but it did make me pause. It made me realize that faith isn't just about believing, it's about wrestling, questioning, and, sometimes, letting go of the things that no longer hold up under scrutiny. For some, that journey leads back to God. For others, it doesn't. But the courage to ask hard questions is something we all must face, sooner or later. In hearing their stories, I've come to understand that the journey of faith is anything but straightforward. It's messy, full of questions, doubts, and contradictions. For some, the weight of it all leads them to walk away. But for others, it becomes a refining fire, a place where faith is stripped of pretense and rebuilt on something deeper and truer. As we navigate these uncertain times, where voices of doubt grow louder and the world seems more fragmented than ever, one thing remains clear: staying close to God is not a passive act. It's an active pursuit, a daily choice to wrestle with Him, to seek His presence even when it feels distant, and to trust His heart even when we don't understand His ways. So, hold on. Stay close to Him, especially now. Let your doubts drive you deeper, not away. Because in this age of noise and uncertainty, anchoring yourself to Him isn't just an option, it's a necessity. And even in the wrestling, He promises to meet us there. But here's even a more fascinating story, and it starts with the question: was it truly God I hated, or was it the fragile human-made version of Him, the one I had been taught to believe in? It was a warm Sunday morning, and the church buzzed with life. The choir sang about God's goodness, their voices blending in harmony. But as I sat in the pew, staring at the polished wooden cross, I couldn't bring myself to join in. My lips wouldn't move, my heart wouldn't stir. I hated Him. It started when my mother got sick. She was the most devout person I knew, prayed daily, fasted regularly, and gave to everyone in need. When the cancer diagnosis came, she said, "God will heal me. He always answers prayers." But He didn't. Instead, I watched the light drain from her eyes, her body wither, and my faith crumble alongside her. I hate God, I told myself, because he lets good people suffer. It didn't stop there. One tragedy led to another financial ruin, failed relationships, dreams dying faster than they could be born. And in every church I went to, they said the same thing: God is good all the time. I wondered, how? How can God be good when the world is this cruel? I hated him for his silence. When I cried out at 3 a.m., begging for answers, there was no voice from the heavens. No peace. Just the empty echo of my own desperation. I hated him for his seeming favoritism. Why do some people thrive while others barely survive? Why did he bless them and not me? I hated him for the contradictions. They said he's loving but also wrathful, merciful but just, omnipotent but unwilling to intervene. It felt like trying to love someone who constantly hurts you and then tells you it's for your own good. But beneath the anger was something else. A question I didn't want to ask because it felt too raw, too vulnerable. Was it really God I hated? Or was it the version of God I'd been taught to believe in? The God who promises health, wealth, and happiness if only you're good enough. The God who dangles blessings like a carrot on a stick, always just out of reach. The God who allows suffering but demands praise. I realized my hatred wasn't for God, it was for the image of him I'd created in my mind. The one who was supposed to make my life perfect, as if his sole purpose was to serve me. And then a thought crept in, soft yet unrelenting. What if God isn't who I think he is? What if God is present in the pain, not absent from it? What if he doesn't promise to shield us from suffering, but to walk with us through it? What if his silence isn't indifference, but an invitation to wrestle with him, to dig deeper, to find meaning beyond the easy answers? I still wrestle with God. Some days, I feel the old anger rise, hot and sharp. But other days, I see glimpses of something more, a love that doesn't always look like I expect, a purpose I don't fully understand. Maybe hating God isn't the opposite of faith. Maybe it's part of the journey, a way of grappling with the mystery of a being who defies comprehension. So, do I hate God? Sometimes. But in that hatred, I find honesty. And in that honesty, I find hope. Because even in the anger, I am still searching. And maybe, just maybe, that's where God meets us, in the tension, the questions, and the messy, beautiful process of being human.